Hello, this is Congressman Steve Cohen, and I want to welcome you to our tax town hall. We have some outstanding experts and staff members to fill you in on some of the things that have been going on in Washington. In about a year's time, President Biden and the congressional Democrats have delivered on historic investments in America's people and infrastructure. Truly historic. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is creating good paying union jobs, rebuilding our roads, bridges, airports, rail, and transit, and making the largest ever investment in clean drinking water while rebuilding the middle class. That bill was a major bill, $1.2 trillion. I supported it regardless of any other passages because I knew how important it was to Memphis, America's distribution center and a transportation center, with the river coming through here and the fourth largest inland port in the country, the largest cargo airport in the country, several major highways, and several Class 1 railroads. So the bill was important for Memphis. It creates jobs. The American Rescue Plan we also passed. It has spurred our economy to faster growth than in any year since 1984. It has created 6.6 million new jobs and lifted 4.1 million children out of poverty. That's quite a record, lifting 4.1 million children out of poverty. That's about 40% of the children in this country who were in poverty. And if you might remember, it gave each citizen $1,400, which was a boost during this pandemic, and people needed that recovery. That was voted on by Democrats, all Democrat votes, no Republican votes. One of the biggest accomplishments in recent history regarding child poverty and regarding the future of this country was the expanded child tax credit. It was part of the American Rescue Plan, and that made it larger and it made it better tailored to working families' needs. The rescue plan raised the maximum credit to $3,600 per child under the age of 6 and $3,000 a year per child under the age of 18. This put more money to help families raise their children. It made the credit fully refundable so that every family, regardless of income in any given year, could receive the full value of the child tax credit. That was real important. It allowed families to receive the child tax credit as a monthly payment, so their families had money in their pockets without having to waiting for tax time. That was a big deal too. In Tennessee's 9th district, our district, more than 79,000 families have received $226 million in payments, up to the $300 per child per month category and the $3,600 a year for the younger kids. Those who receive those monthly payments can expect the second half of the credit, up to $1,800 per child, to hit their bank accounts after filing. For families who opted out of monthly payments, the full value of the credit, up to $3,600, will lower their tax bills or be sent as a lump sum. The child tax credit wasn't the only major tax-related accomplishment in the American Rescue Plan. For the first time since 1993, the Rescue Plan increased the Earned Income Tax Credit for workers without dependent children from about $540 to $1,500, and raised the income cap to qualify from roughly $16,000 a year to $21,000. The American Rescue Plan aimed its benefits in the tax plan at the people that needed the relief, people earning at the lower level and people with children. And it hit the people, the money went where it helped the economy, and it helped individuals struggling with the pandemic and to making ends meet. The Trump tax plan gave 90% to the wealthiest 1%. We expanded the age of eligible workers without children to include adults aged 19 to 24 and people aged 65 and over, as well as qualified foster and homeless youth. Additionally, Congress gave all taxpayers the option to use their 2019 tax information for purposes of claiming the EITC, Earned Income Tax Credit, for 2021. This was to ensure taxpayers would not be harmed by a drop in income due to the pandemic. All of this is on top of the American Rescue Plan stimulus checks, the $1,400 I talked about, increased child and dependent care tax credit, expanded ACA, Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, premium tax credits, enhanced unemployment, and additional investments in small businesses, education, nutrition, and housing. Between the stimulus checks and the child tax credit alone, the American Rescue Plan will deliver this tax year up to $11,400 to a single parent with 2 young children. That's a big deal. Yes, we've got inflation and we're working against it. Inflation's a worldwide problem. But the big things are our economy is in good shape. People have more money. They're less unemployed. There are more jobs. And that's because of the work of Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress. Keep in mind, to receive the full value of all these expanded credits, you must file a tax return and claim any credits you are owed. To avoid delays, it is strongly recommended that you file online and request direct deposit, so it goes straight into a bank account. But doing this is no simple task. That's why today we will answer your tax questions and discuss the free tax prep resources available to you, as well as the offer tips for filing your returns and maximizing the refunds. With that, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists from the IRS's Taxpayer Advocate Service. First, Mr. Kenneth Hobson. He's the acting local taxpayer advocate in Memphis. Born and raised right here in Memphis, graduated from Christian Brothers University, a Buccaneer. He spent 34 years in IRS management, including as a local taxpayer advocate in West Virginia, Georgia, and now he's back home in Memphis. We're also joined today by Miss Betsy Gallup, Memphis acting local taxpayer advocate group manager. Her usual post of duty is as lead case advocate in Houston, Texas. Ms. Gallup graduated from Park University with a degree in management and accounting. She has 15 years of experience as an accountant and project manager in the private sector and 12 years at the IRS, primarily working with the Taxpayers Advocate Service. Thanks to both of you for joining us today and lending us your expertise. Look forward to our discussion. And Mr. Hobson, would you like to begin with some opening remarks?
Yes, sir, I would. And thank you for having me this afternoon. First, I'd like to talk about what is the Taxpayer Advocate Service. So the Taxpayer Advocate Service, or TAS, is an independent department within IRS, which is responsible for assisting individual taxpayers with resolving IRS issues and responsible for identifying systemic issues impacting groups of taxpayers. TAS was established by congressional legislation, which was passed in the late 90s, and a national taxpayer advocate goes before Congress each year to present a list of the most serious problems taxpayers are experiencing, as well as specific legislative recommendations intended to improve the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS. TAS is also responsible for managing the funding and oversight of low-income taxpayer clinics across the country. This is a really important resource a lot of people are not aware of. If your income falls below a certain level based on where you live and the size of your family, you can qualify for a range of assistance provided by LITC, including tax preparation and assistance with IRS audits. And what is my role as a local taxpayer advocate? So the National Taxpayer Advocate, or NTA, has delegated the authority imparted by Congress to local taxpayer advocates, or LTAs, across the country to ensure all taxpayers have access to services provided by the Taxpayer Advocate Service. Every state has an LTA, and the larger states like California, Texas, and Florida, for example, have multiple LTAs. Tennessee currently has 2 LTAs. We have one in Nashville, and we have Memphis. In my role as LTA, I am responsible for providing administrative oversight for the intake and case advocates, as well as group managers in my operation. I am responsible for establishing relationships with community organizations to help spread the word about TAS and to participate in activities which allow us to educate the public about taxpayer rights, for example, or educating taxpayers about various federal income tax related topics, such as earned income tax credit, recording, record keeping for self-employed individuals, and assistance with resolving federal tax debt based on your ability to pay. Administratively, I'm responsible for hiring, training, and retaining advocates. I'm responsible for ensuring management actions taken are fair and responsible for ensuring taxpayers are receiving the best possible services we can provide. I make sure the advocates in the office have the supplies, equipment, and technical training, as well as support needed to be successful. I'm also responsible for addressing taxpayer complaints about the service that we provide, including elevating unique trends and issues impacting the taxpayers in my state. Becky, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Betsy Gallup. I am the one of two group managers in the Memphis office. And I help Ken do his job. I help make sure that the advocates have the resources they need in order to successfully advocate for the taxpayers. I also act as another source for taxpayers when they can't reach their case advocate or they're having problems communicating. For example, an advocate out of the office, or the explanation just really doesn't make sense and they need to hear it from another source. And I also provide feedback to the case advocates to make sure that they stay on track with following regulations and procedures in providing the best service possible to the taxpayers.
Thank you, Ms. Gallup. I appreciate it very much. And I appreciate each of you being with us. We have been collecting questions from constituents, which I hope you can both answer. To begin, I wanted to ask a few questions to better understand the Taxpayer Advocate Service or task. Would either or both of you explain what services people can expect to get from task, and how can they reach the Tennessee Advocate Service?
Yes, sir, I'll take that question. So each inquiry or request for help that we receive is screened by intake advocates to ensure it meets task criteria. Task is not intended to take the place of the IRS, and taxpayers must try to resolve their issues with IRS before the issue can meet task criteria. The exception to that rule involves an urgent, time-sensitive matter for hardship situations, for example, which can include addressing IRS collection actions to avoid irreparable damage such as loss of work or property. When an inquiry becomes an actual case, it's assigned to a case advocate who will be responsible for resolution of the issue or for keeping the taxpayer informed during the life of the case. This means you will have one person to talk with about your IRS issue. You should not call the IRS anymore once you have an advocate, because the IRS employee won't have access to your case history or task case. The advocate is responsible for explaining the IRS process that is involved in answering your questions. Sometimes multiple departments are involved and the advocate develops an action plan which takes this into account. There are certain processes which will require documentation to be provided, and the advocate must know the difference. Excuse me, the second question was, how can they get in contact with us, I believe?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so TAS has an account with Facebook as well as Twitter, LinkedIn Learning, and YouTube. The NTA releases information through her online blog. Also, you can find a wealth of information at our website, www.taxpayeradvocate@irs.gov. And I'll repeat that, that's www.taxpayeradvocate@irs.gov.
So it's www.taxpayeradvocate@irs.gov,
correct. Right, www.taxpayeradvocate@irs.gov.
I think we got it.
Okay.
Are there any other tax preparation resources that people should be pointed towards?
Yes, there's VITA that you can locate in your area or community, as well as the low income tax clinics that are available to assist with preparing tax returns.
And the taxpayer should have an adjusted gross income of $73,000 or less to be eligible for free online tax preparation, which you can find by Googling Irs Free File. Irs Free File, and if your income is $73,000 or less, you get free tax preparation. The IRS's Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, VITA, which Mr. Hobson mentioned, and Tax Counseling for the Elderly programs also offer free basic tax preparation to qualified individuals. And to locate the nearest site, use VITA Locator Tool at irs.gov. irs.treasury.gov/free-tax-prep. That's a lot to remember, I guess, and maybe we can post it. I don't know if that's possible to post it up on the screen at some point, but it's our vital locator tool at the irs.treasury.gov. They do have a phone number, 800-906-9887, 800-906-9887. Many constituents have experienced and described the IRS having a great backlog of millions of delayed returns. In fact, I was watching the news today and they were saying they're still having returns from last year they haven't got to. So it's been difficult to get your refunds. I've urged the IRS to take steps to reduce the backlog and provide relief to taxpayers, while also working with my House colleagues to reverse years of IRS underfunding and modernizing their technology. The more people you have working at the IRS, the more tax returns you can go through and the more money the government's going to have. The Republicans have not wanted to give IRS more money because they don't want them to be able to look at your tax return and service it. It's unfortunate they're government legislators, but they're for killing the government. For this year especially, what recommendations, Mr. Hobson, do you have for filers to avoid delays?
Well, the first thing I would advise them to do would be to file online electronically. As you stated, there's Free File that's available. There's several different companies you can use, H&R Block, Tax Act, TurboTax. The next thing I would advise them to do is to make sure that all the information that they have that's on their tax return is the same information that their employers submitted to the IRS. If they don't have that same information, if they don't match up, then your tax return kicks out, even if it's filed electronically. It's called a math error in most cases. And a person has to look at it. Well, that delays your tax return because, as you just stated, there is a backlog of tax processing, particularly paper processing. So make sure that the information on your return is correct. And if you have not filed previously, some of the people might want to know that when you get to the part where it asks you for your adjusted gross income, make sure you enter 0. If you haven't filed, or if your return has not been processed currently, you enter 0, and then your tax return should go straight through. But if you have filed previously and your tax return information is in the system, then you need to put the adjusted gross income in there. That is what I found to be one of the biggest issues, is that going into the filing season, people have not obtained all the information required that should be on the tax return. It's either incorrect or some kind of error as it relates to, transposing information.
You mentioned HR Block and another company. Those are private companies. They charge, do they not?
Well, they're free based on your income, but they do charge, for certain, if you have certain tax forms, like say maybe the Savers Credit or Child Care Dependent Care Credit, they charge for those additional forms, but generally speaking, it's free, yes.
But if your income's $73,000 or less, it's always free from IRS Free File. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So IRS Free File is what people need to remember. How long should someone wait for an individual or amended return to process? And what do you recommend for someone who's been waiting longer than the typical period of time?
Well, an amended return during normal times, non-pandemic times, is approximately 16 to 20 weeks. Now that we're in the pandemic, amended return is a paper process in most cases. You can file an amended return for the same year. For instance, we're in 2021 tax year. You can file an amended return for 2021 after your return has processed. And during these times, it's 6 months or more. So if you have an amended return that has not been processed, I would not recommend that you file a second return at this point in time, because eventually they're going to get to you and you don't want to clog the system up with duplicate returns. However, I want you to keep in mind that amended return is kind of the second time around. You've already been through the system. There was possibly some information you made a mistake on, or you left something off, and you're going back through. Well, the IRS's focus is on making sure that they can get their current refunds out, because they have 45 days to do that. If they don't do that, then they have to pay interest. So there is an initial delay with the non-pandemic times, and during the pandemic time, it's kind of, exacerbated. So I would stand pat, and then if it's, more than 6 months, then you may consider, additional actions.
Can you file an amended return for 2018 or 2020?
You can file an amended, well, you have 3 years to file an amended return. So 2018 would have to be filed by April 17th of this year. If you have a refund, you'll still be able to get it. But if you file after that time and you have a refund, you will not get your refund. So 2018 and 2018, 17, you know, well, this way, 2018, 19, 20, you can file amendments, but past 2018, no, you're too late for 2017.
I got you. And if somebody filed the 2021 return but made an error, should you wait and file? This is what somebody asked. Should I wait and file an amended return or do something sooner? Will this delay my refund?
It depends on what that error is. You know, if it's a math error where they didn't put the right figures down, then it kicks out. Someone has to look at it. That's a delay. So you really shouldn't file an amended return because the original return has not processed yet. So there's nothing to amend. So, you know, depending on how long it takes for the original return to be processed, you could possibly correct that error on an original tax return as opposed to an amended return. So I would say for 2021, amended return at this point is not in order for a paper return. If it's an electronic return that's been processed, meaning they have received a refund and they realize that there's an error, then they can do an amended return online.
And another question in the same area was, somebody said, when I signed up for the advanced child tax credit, I entered the wrong information. Will the IRS refund me the difference?
The IRS, the 2021 tax return have information where you can reconcile your child tax credit, meaning if you didn't get the initial 6 months worth of credits, you can get that when you file your 2021 tax return. So yes, there is a situation where you can reconcile your advanced child tax credit.
Will the IRS simply correct it themselves, or do you have to do something to do it?
Well, the IRS will correct it because they sent out a form 6419 that told all the taxpayers how much money they had received from the IRS for the 6 months worth of advanced child tax credit. So if you don't have that document, you know, I would make sure that I would go to the irs.gov and look in my, or maybe get an account, or go to the irs.gov portal to see how much money they actually received. Because if they don't get that number right, it kicks out the system. A person has to look at it, and that's where your delays are. So I would advise anyone that is unsure about what they received, maybe they can go to their bank accounts, if it was direct deposit, or they can go to irs.gov and reconcile before they, you know, enter information, because IRS has a number and your number has to jive with their number. And when it doesn't jive, it kicks out.
Thank you. Other constituents had other questions they want in other areas. One, if I did not file last year, what do I need to do to file this year?
Okay, so it depends on a couple of things, but you can absolutely file 2021 tax return and you did not file 2020. You can do that. There's not going to be any stoppage from the 2021 tax return. But what's going to happen at some point down the line is you know, you maybe file 2019, you miss 2020, you do 2021, 2022. IRS is going to want to know what happened to that year that you didn't file. Now, maybe you didn't work, or maybe you didn't have any income during that year, and that's perfectly fine. But if you did have income and your employer submitted the information to IRS, you will get a letter telling you that, you know, you didn't file a return, and they will refile a return on your behalf, and it won't be in your best interest.
Question from another constituent. I'm retired and my only income is Social Security, but I received the child tax credit for my custodial grandchild. Should I file?
The answer to that question is it depends, but I would say that Social Security, depending on, you know, your personal situation, it could be taxable. And if it's taxable, the child tax credit is a credit, which lowers your taxes owed. So if your Social Security is not taxable, then, you know, you might not want to file, but I would file just to make sure that if there was an opportunity to receive some child tax credit, that would be the way to do it. They won't mail it to you. You have to file.
Thank you. We've had numerous questions about stimulus checks. Do I have to report the stimulus check on my tax return, and if so, how?
You do have to report the stimulus check. It's a reconciliation. So, you know, there have been 3 stimulus checks. The first one was EIP 1, which was $500. The second was EIP 2, which was $600. And the third one was EIP 3, which was $1,400. The $1,400 was the last one that would be reconciled on your 2021 tax return, meaning if for some reason you didn't get that return, you didn't get that check, then you want to reconcile it on your 2021 tax return because you'll get that money at that time. So if you were supposed to get $1,400 and for whatever reason you didn't get it, then that's $1,400 that's added to your refund at that point in time.
Will I owe taxes on the stimulus payment, or will receiving it lower my refund?
You will not owe taxes on the stimulus check at all, and it won't lower your refund. It can only add to your refund.
Some constituents reported never having received their payments or getting less than they believe they were owed. What should they do? Do they still get the money or get the?
There's still a reconciliation situation where, yes, if they are owed that money, if they didn't get it, if it got lost in the mail, or if they moved and it was not forwarded to that address, they will still get the money, yes.
Now, a few questions about claiming dependents and the child tax credit. Can I claim a dependent if they got a stimulus check last year?
No, you cannot. If they got a stimulus check, then you cannot claim that dependent.
How will receiving the advanced child tax credit payments affect my taxes this year?
Okay, well, if you had a kid that was under 6, that's $3,600 that you should receive. So that means that you would have received $1,800 in the 6 months for 2021. So instead of getting $3,600 on your refund, your 2021 tax refund, you will get $1,800. You have to account for the $1,800 that you received. So it's an advance of the money that you would have gotten on your refund at this point in time. And the reason for that is you're trying to get money out into the economy so people could spend money and the economy could continue to move.
Ms. Gallup, person asked, I was taking care of my relative's daughter relative to last year, my daughter's relative last year, and claimed her as a dependent on my 2020 tax return. But she is back with her mom, and the mom is planning to claim her daughter as a dependent for 2021. I received the advance payments, but have given them directly to the mom, since she has been the one supporting the child this year. Will I have to pay the child tax credit back even though I gave it to the kid's mom? Or does the mom need to claim the child tax credit she received?
What happened between you and the mom, the IRS is not going to get involved in. That's between you and the mom. The mom can file, if she qualifies to claim the child this year, she can file claiming the child and get the child tax credit on her tax return. And that means you may end up having to pay it back through your tax return.
How should tax filers handle the transfer of dependents, and who should claim the child tax credit?
Well, go ahead, Betsy, I'm sorry.
I can answer that one. The IRS, they determine where the child lives based on the tax return. So if you don't have the child anymore, you just won't claim the child on the tax return. And whoever does claim the child, in this case, the mom, that is where the IRS is going to assume the child lives, and that is where they're going to assume the credit belongs.
One person asked if they're eligible to receive the EITC based on unemployment income. Would you describe eligibility for the earned income tax credit and any changes made to that by the American Rescue Plan?
Do you want that one, Ken?
Yeah, I can take that one. So earned income taxes are based on earned wages, meaning, you know, working from a job, the gig economy. You could be a driver for a restaurant delivering meals. You could be self-employed, but it has to be earned income. It's not unemployment. It's not pension. It's not, for the most part, investments. So if you have earned income or wage income, W-2 income, you can claim earned income tax credit. And also this year, EIT has been expanded that single filers, the age limit has increased. I think it's over 65 now. And younger taxpayers, previously they could not do earned income tax credit. That number is 19 now. So it's to your benefit if you're a single taxpayer and you meet the income requirements to file your return for the credit.
Ms. Gallup, another constituent want to know if unemployment benefits can still be deducted in 2021.
No, that was something for 2020.
Thank you, Ms. Gallup. Are there any other deductions or credits that you want to highlight today, Mr. Hobson or Ms. Gallup, including single filers without dependents?
Well, as we stated, there's the EITC, there's a savers credit for people that have retirement plans. There's the child dependent care credit for individuals that have daycare for their children. There's an elderly tax credit that you can apply for. As we've talked about earlier, the child tax credit, which has expanded in the amount. Those are the main ones that I can think of right now. Ms.
Gallup, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, he said the highlighted ones.
Great. A few additional questions that came in. What is the tax identification number or TIN and who is eligible?
Okay, so a tax identification number is a number that is used by the IRS to administer tax laws, okay? And it's a 9-digit number that is utilized. It can be by individuals, it can be businesses, or it could be nonprofit organizations. People also use a TIN, tax identification number, for banking purposes. Also, your Social Security number is considered a tax identification number. It is administered by the Social Security Administration. They provide you with that number, but it's also considered to be a taxpayer identification number.
Question was asked, will I have to pay back my refunds? Could the EITC or the CTC, the child tax credit, increase the taxes I owe or raise my tax bracket?
It's not going to necessarily raise your tax bracket, but if you were overpaid your child tax credit or your advanced child tax credit, you may end up having to pay it back. So it could reduce your refund.
Thank you, Ms. Gallup. Question, what should I do if I get a letter from the IRS stating that I did not file a past tax return, but I paid a preparer to file for me?
So let me take that question. So what we have been experiencing is that taxpayers that owe money, they send their tax return in with a check. The IRS deposits the check. I mean, it's just good business. We don't want that to lay around, but they take the return and shelve it. As I stated earlier, you know, when you have a refund, it's more important to get that refund out in 45 days. So what happens is they put that tax return on the shelf, they credit your account, your module, with the money that you've already paid. Okay, now you get a letter saying, we don't have your tax return. And they don't have your tax return because they haven't processed it, or it's lost, could have fallen over behind the shelf or something. So they send you a letter saying, hey, we need a copy of your tax return. So that's a legitimate situation for a lot of taxpayers that receive that letter. Now, the other part of the question about what can you do about your taxpayer, you're prepared to make that situation right for you. I mean, I don't know if you have to pay them again or not. That's really not an IRS situation, but if you have a copy of your return, you can make a copy of their return and send it in to the IRS, and date it, sign it and date it with the original date, and that would be sufficient.
There was a pretty publicized incident where there was a company here called Mo Money Taxes. I don't know if they exist anymore or not. And many people in 18 different states, including Virginia, where Bobby Scott, the congressman in that area, joined with me in a bill, but it was also here in Memphis where they were headquartered, were scammed. In response, we introduced, Representative Scott and I, the Taxpayer Return Preparer Accountability Act, which provide explicit authority for the IRS to regulate tax return preparers. It could be that the tax preparer, sometimes I think they kept the refund and there were some problems there. So I highly urge you to use the free tax filing that is available from the IRS. Time permitting, I'd like to ask some questions from our Zoom question and answers or chat, or refer to additional questions on the next page. So do we have some more questions?
I see a question that says, is there any indication the tax filing deadline will be extended? And the answer to that is not at this time. I don't know anything about the extending of the tax filing season. Another question, can I claim education, medical, and dental related expenses? Those would be a deduction on your Schedule 1, or used to be known as Schedule A, but the amount has to exceed your adjusted gross income by 7.5%, meaning if you had $10,000 worth of medical expenses, you're going to take everything above $7,500. Congressman, I see there's a question in the chat about I had an issue with filing fiscal year 2020 tax return due to a birthday or social security number error. I was told by the IRS I will not be able to resolve the issue until April 1st. Will I be penalized for late filing due to the error, or should I just go ahead and file 2021 filing? That's a good question. And I think the answer to that question is that they won't be penalized because their tax return has already been received. So whenever they get that information corrected, there won't be a penalty to that taxpayer.
Another question we were asked, are there any tax credits for single filers with no dependent children and no income?
Betsy, you know anything about that? EIT, is that EITC?
EITC would still have earned income credit
Right.
attached to, or earned income attached to it. So for those who have no income, there's nothing on the horizon that I'm aware of.
Great.
There's no stimulus payments, in other words.
Right. How can caregivers take advantage of the $5,000 tax credit on their returns?
I'm not familiar with that. Are you, Betsy, $5,000 tax credit?
I believe
Bill
this is
hasn't
part of a
passed
bill that,
It
yeah.
isn't law yet. That was a question we were asked, and that hasn't passed yet, but there's a proposal for it. So we'll worry about that when the bill passes. It may be part of Build Back Better, and that may never pass. So let's hold off on that one. What help can I get to receive my 2021 refund? It's been 9 months and I haven't received.
2021, it depends on how they file. Did they file electronically? Did they file paper? I've come to know that a lot of people that file electronically and their return was rejected, they were not aware of it. So if it's a 2020 tax return, it's been 9 months and there's no response, if there's a refund involved, I would probably file another tax return for 2020.
I think what we need to do here, and I don't think we have the ability to put it up on the screen, but I think we need to let people, remind people about how to get in touch with the free tax filing system. And if your adjusted income is $73,000, yes, you can get free online tax preparation. You Google IRS Free File, IRS Free File, and it'll show you how to file for free if your income is $73,000 or less. And the IRS's Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, IDA, and Tax Counseling for the Elderly, TCE programs also offer free basic tax return preparation for qualified individuals. To locate the nearest site, use the VITA Locator tool at irs.treasury.gov. Free tax prep, or a phone number you might want to call. People listening might want to take this down: 1-800-906-9887. 1-800-906-9887. So those are major numbers. You should always use the opportunity to file for free, and that's the best way to do it. IRS Free File. Just Google that, and they'll give you all the information.
This is Congressman. This is Quentin jumping in from your team, but we've dropped that information in the chat. It's also for those who are watching on Facebook. You can see it in the comment for the live stream. So definitely use those resources. And Congressman, we do have some more questions that have come in from the folks watching on the Q&A. There was if you click on Q&A, you can see those questions.
Why don't
One
you ask the
person-
questions, Quentin? I'm gonna
Sure.
sit back for a second.
So one person asked, how do we utilize the caregiver tax credit on our tax return? I think we touched on a bit, but if you have any thoughts on that.
Listen,
So that is back to that bill hasn't passed yet. So
Okay.
at this time, you can't. So we're just gonna have to wait on that one.
Okay. And one person also wanted to know, forgive me if we touch on this, but what is the benefit of using a TIN number instead of Social Security?
well, there is no real benefit from using it. Well, as I stated earlier, a TIN number is a social security number as well as a 9-digit number for businesses. So if you don't have a business or you're not trying to bank for some purpose or whatever, there's no need for a TIN, a tax ID number. You just could use your social security number.
My guess is they're asking, why would they use an EIN, an employer identification number, instead of a social security number? And some people would prefer to use that because it protects their social security number when they're giving it out for purposes such as an individual who's acting as a child care provider may not want to give all of the parents their social security number where they'd feel more comfortable giving an EIN out.
That's a good point. Thank you.
So in cases like that, or if you're working freelance, you may have a client who you only see once or twice, but you have 100 clients, you may feel more comfortable with that EIN floating around than your social security number.
Good point, Betsy. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. And one person wants to know, I recently purchased a residential home last year. Is there any deductions or credits that can help me?
Well, there's the itemized deductions depending on how much, if it exceeds her standard deduction, depending on a personal situation. But yeah, there are some benefits to home purchases as it relates to tax.
There are a few questions I see here in the questions and answers, and Ms. Cordova asked, how do we utilize the caregiver tax credit? Well, we've answered that. It hasn't been passed yet. Mr. Fayez Azah said, I'm a man of a big family of 6 kids and me and my wife, and I got something wrong with my refunds from 2017 to, well, he says 2022. I don't know how he could have done that already. I didn't receive any tax refunds and any help from the government, and the coronavirus, I guess, help they gave me, gave to others besides the first $1,200. But the others they had passed out, I didn't get any for me or my kids, and all my income keeps decreasing every year. And the tax people told me I owe a balance from 2017. So something's wrong with this case. I contact people for help and no one helped me. I don't get any help. I'm the man with the bad health problems. I got heart, high blood pressure, all these different health problems he's got, and I need help. He wants to find out why I can't get my tax for 3 years. Please help me. Who would you recommend he call?
So this is what I recommend. He can call my office at 901-707-3900. And he could also go online and do a form 911 at task.tn.memphis@irs.gov. So that's tas.tn.memphis@irs.gov. And allow at least 2 weeks to be contacted, because we still have a large backlog, just the same as IRS does. So he can call that number 901-707. Somebody will get back to him, and if he meets the criteria, sounding like he does, we could take a case in and work with him individually.
There are a couple of other things he can also do. Number one, he can go to irs.gov and get a copy of his account transcript for 2017. If he can't get it online, he can order it and they'll mail it to him. And that may, by looking at that, he may be able to tell why he has a balance due in 2017. The other thing he can do is, if he's filing his current tax return and he has a current hardship, and we're talking one of the big ones like I've got an eviction notice. I've got utility shut-off notices. I'm going to lose my car, something along those lines. He can send in that 911 and mention on there, I have a hardship. My hardship is, can you protect my current year tax refund and have it refunded to me? And we can bypass that debt and get him at least enough of his refund to cover his hardship. So that's something else that Taz can do for him.
Another question I see here came from a gentleman who said, is there an earned income tax credit for seniors?
Well, there's no current, I mean, for this tax year, the age limit was raised. I don't know what his age is, but if he has some wage income, then I would advise him to file a tax return and apply for earned income tax credit.
And I think that's got most of the questions I see here. Ms. Cordova asked another question. What if I take care of a parent? Can you claim the parent on your tax return? I don't know. Can.
The answer to that question is, one, does the person provide more than half of the support for that parent? Does that parent meet the income limits, which I think is $4,300? And does that parent, they don't have to live with them, they could live somewhere else, but they need to meet at a minimum those two requirements.
So that they can claim the parent if they meet those requirements.
Correct, yes.
Then somebody asked just a few minutes ago, would the speaker's contact information be shared, such as the number and email? And I think Quentin, have we done that online? Is that posted?
It is posted. We'll follow up with everybody who attended the event, and I'll drop that in the chat as well again, so folks have that.
But Mr. Hobson could give it again. What's the telephone number for your?
901-707-3900. You will get a voicemail. You need to leave your information and someone will get back to you expeditiously, but keep in mind that there are long backlogs and phone calls.
So it's like a big airplane, a 707 and then 3900.
Correct.
Okay. And is there an email also to reach? We mentioned the email on the free file.
Yes, tas.tn.memphis@irs.gov. That's TAS.TN.MEMPHIS@irs.gov.
An IRS free file. That's a good one to remember.
Yeah.
Here's a lady asked, how do you file taxes on income that has not been taxed?
That's a good question.
I guess that's cash.
Oh. Well, she would have to, that's something that she would be doing, remitting on her own. There's no records of that, and she could just put that as other income on her tax return and pay taxes on it and send it to us. We'll cash the check. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, otherwise, I think that's got most of our questions answered, and most of our time has gone by. I want to thank Mr. Hobson and Ms. Gallup for this discussion and for your information and for what you do every day. Would either of you want to add something here at the close?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that thank you for this opportunity. TAS is an organization that is here for you. And if you can utilize our services, please reach out to us at one of the addresses that's been mentioned earlier. And I look forward to assisting as many people as we can. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for being with us. Ms. Gallup, you have any close?
I do. I want to mention at irs.gov, there is a link on the homepage to get answers to your tax questions. And then some of the answers, the questions that we were asked at the end here, like, can I claim a parent as a dependent? There is an interactive, it says on here directly, who can I claim as a dependent? And if you will click through on the link, it has an interactive yes, no format. And at the end, it will spit out, yes, you can claim this person as a dependent. No, you cannot. So that may be another way to get answers to your questions when you can't get someone on the phone.
And I guess that's a lady asked a few minutes ago, how can I file my 20-year-old child with autism? and in college? Is he a dependent?
Right, that would be a good place for her to find that out. Typically, if they have a handicap, you can. The IRS may need you to prove that they're handicapped, but you can typically claim them. But the interactive assistant would be a wonderful tool for her.
Thank you, Ms. Gallup. Thank you, Mr. Hobson. Well, I think I mentioned it time and time again. I'll mention it one last time. Irs Free File. Irs Free File. That's where you 73,000 income or less, you get file your IRS taxes free. The nearest site at irs.treasury.gov/free tax prep. Our phone number is 800-906-9887. I think that concludes our program. I want to thank my staff for working with us. Rick Maynard, who does some tax work in my office for individuals with questions. And my office number, of course, is 544-4131. Congress keeps the same phone numbers for everybody that has District 9. So Harold Ford Jr. had that number. I was up in my attic. I've been in my house now for 34 years this coming year. And I was up in my attic going through some things, and I saw something that one of the previous owners had wrapped up in a newspaper. And I kind of unwrapped it to see what the heck was in there. And I saw a newspaper article from the Commercial Appeal saying back from 1975, I think it was, and it said, call Congressman Harold Ford Sr. at 544-4131. And I thought, 544-4131, that's my number. So it's been there, this number for the Congressman since at least then. I guess, I don't know if Dan Kirkendall are going back at it or not. At some time in the past, y'all might not be, I remember when all the phone numbers were Broadway or Faxon or Mutual or Glenview or Glendale or something like that. They didn't have numbers. They started with letters. So maybe that was changed back then. But thank you for calling. If you need the help of my office with anything, call 544-4131. Thank you, Mr. Hobson.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Gallup. This has been Steve Cohen and Team Cohen. Get your taxes filed early.